Some Josh Allen MVP voters found themselves scrambling to defend their choice against Lamar Jackson, as well as getting destroyed and roasted from some former Baltimore Ravens. We talk about what was said, the reasoning behind both Lamar votes and Josh Allen votes, all coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here on this bonus edition on Saturday, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Free and available for you on all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel. Also in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We are a 5-day-a-week plus more daily Ravens show. So we bring you news, analysis, updates year-round, in-season, off-season. We have you covered with Ravens content here on Locked On Ravens. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Crazy week. Super Bowl is tomorrow. It'll mark the last day of the NFL season, which is unbelievable. I say it all the time. It feels like we were just talking yesterday about Isaiah Likely and him being out of bounds, talking about can the Ravens bounce back from their 0-2 start, which they did. And here we are. Season is over after tomorrow. But there were some crazy headlines throughout the whole Super Bowl week, and felt like a couple of bonus episodes, probably we'll have a bonus episode tomorrow as well. Felt like a couple of bonus episodes were needed to not just completely overshadow them. I wanted to spend some time talking about some headlines that we heard, especially yesterday with the MVP choice, Lamar Jackson losing to Josh Allen. Some Josh Allen voters took to their platforms and defended their vote and ended up getting roasted by some former Baltimore Ravens players, including one that we know very well here on Locked On Ravens. So we're going to talk about Dan Orlovsky, talk about Emmanuel Acho, and kind of the reasoning that these Josh Allen MVP voters used to vote for Josh. And then we'll get the other side of that. Mina Kimes, she gave her reason for voting for Lamar. Some others did as well. We're going to talk about that side of it too. I think it's good to have that conversation of, okay, why did one side vote the way they did? Why did the other side vote the way that they did as well? Then we'll continue talking about kind of the shocking mood over the MVP, because that really feels like one of the other big storylines of this whole conversation. It's just like, man, people are still shocked at this historic. This was a historic upset that Josh Allen pulled off over Lamar Jackson, particularly because it is generally, it's not the first time it's happened, but generally pretty unprecedented. So let's get into it. Let's start off with Dan Orlovsky first. Dan is someone that, obviously rode pretty hard for Josh throughout the entirety of the season. And that's because he likes Josh Allen, and that's completely fine. I have no problem with people liking Josh Allen. I personally like Josh Allen. I think both Lamar and Josh are incredible players, incredible quarterbacks. I don't want to take away from who Josh Allen is and what he's able to do on that football field, because it absolutely is incredible. But Dan Orlovsky talked on Get Up about why he voted for Josh Allen over Lamar Jackson, and said the value that the player brought to their football team, the Bills didn't have an elite defense, had a very good run game, not a great run game, didn't have elite perimeter players. Lamar's season was absolutely sensational. He was probably the best player in football this year. And he also mentioned Saquon Barkley, Jamar Chase, etc. He said, but value and how much you impact your team, who you do it with and who you do it against, that's where I think Josh Allen had the upper hand. Okay. So I think we have to talk about a couple of things in that answer. The first of which, the most egregious one, in my opinion, being who Josh Allen did it against. I think that is one of the biggest conversations that goes in Lamar Jackson's favor, as we will talk about in the second part of the show. Lamar had the fifth hardest schedule this season, fifth hardest strength of schedule. Josh Allen, he was 19th. Lamar played in the harder division this season. It's not really close. Want to compare AFC North versus AFC East this year. A lot of people had high expectations for the Jets and the Dolphins this year, but it was not the reality. The Jets were awful. The Dolphins were awful. The Patriots were awful. The Ravens, yeah, the Browns were awful, and the Ravens lost to Cleveland once, so that certainly is not a great thing. But Cincinnati's offense was incredible. The defense was bad, but still, Cincinnati's offense was as high-powered as we saw in the league. They were a top 3 offense in the league last season or this past year. And then you have Pittsburgh, who their offense was bad, but their defense was able to carry them at least up until that final month of the year or so. It kind of fell off after that. So, we saw the Ravens beat every single playoff team. We saw the Ravens go out there, AFC playoff team, right? We saw the Ravens beat every single AFC playoff team except for the Chiefs. That was the one playoff team the Ravens did not beat. They played all of them. The only one they could not beat was the Chiefs. Yes, Josh Allen had a signature moment against Kansas City. I'm not trying to take that away from him. I'm truly not. But the argument of like who Lamar did it against versus who Josh did it against, Lamar, even if you want to talk about record versus playoff teams, right? That is also a thing that favors Lamar Jackson. So I don't really understand that. And then where did we, and maybe this goes more into Emmanuel Acho's answer because he was very adamant on this topic, but when did we start this like definition of valuable? When did we start caring about what the word valuable meant? Like, if Lamar Jackson was the best player in the league, according to Dan here, then I feel like that is enough to constitute a vote for MVP. We've never kind of had that conversation about what value meant up until this season. And Lamar also was being punished for having good teammates. Again, and these Bills players, like if I'm James Cook, if I'm Khalil Shakir, I'm sitting there like, man, what did I do to be dragged through the mud like this? Yes, Lamar had a better supporting cast than Josh. I will admit that. I have admitted that in the past. But, man, it's not like Josh was playing with absolute scrubs out there. Josh's offensive line was better, and still, like, yes, James Cook is not Derrick Henry, but James Cook is still really good and had a really good season. So the Bills didn't have an elite defense. Well, neither did Baltimore. I mean, their defense was great the second half of the season, but did we not see the defense struggle immensely throughout the first half of the year and in the secondary or pass defense? Like that wasn't a full year of elite defense, not like Lamar had in 2023. So again, that to me is kind of where the argument falls off for me. And Dominique Foxworth and Jeff Saturday, his colleagues over there on Get Up, just laughed in his face when he provided his answer. They gagged, like they laughed in his face. And Dominique Foxworth called Dan Orlovsky out, saying, quote, "You're trying to split the baby. You don't have the heart to say what you actually want to say. You're trying to find a semantics trapdoor because you don't want to say what you actually want to say. Lamar Jackson had the best season this year." And Jeff Saturday said, "Is this the MVP of the league or MVP of the Bills?" Because that's kind of what Dan Orlovsky was portraying in his answer. And again, it's like, and Dominique Foxworth, by the way, he was a dude when he was with the Ravens back in the day. So a former Baltimore Raven who sticking up for Lamar Jackson here. And it's kind of a situation where whether people voted for Lamar's first team All-Pro or voted for Lamar's Offensive Player of the Year, and they felt like doing that was giving them justification of, okay, well, I'm recognizing Lamar here, so now I don't have to recognize him in another place. That to me is not how it should work at all. And, if you want to talk about Dan's vote, he did vote for Lamar Jackson as the Offensive Player of the Year. So is that where Dan is saying, oh, well, I recognized him for this, so I don't have to recognize him for that? That's not how it should work. So Dan was pretty torn apart for his take by his colleagues on set, which was pretty crazy to watch. But coming up in the second part of the show, Emmanuel Acho, he also was torn apart by a former Baltimore Raven, not on the set of his show, but in the comments of a post on social media. So be sure to stay tuned for that. We're going to talk about what he had to say, plus Mina Kimes and others defending Lamar Jackson and giving their reasoning. We got a lot coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is sponsored by Betterhelp. What are some of your relationship green flags? We often hear about the red flags you should avoid. But what if we focus more on identifying the positive signs in our relationships? those green flags. If you're not sure what they look like, therapy can help you identify them, actively practice them, and even embody that green flag energy yourself. Whether you're dating, married, building a friendship, or just working on yourself, therapy can help you form relationships that love you back. Therapy helps you develop healthy boundaries and improves your communication skills and empowers you to set clear expectations and express your needs in relationships. Therapy provides tools for managing conflict in ways that strengthen your connections rather than break them down. BetterHelp makes it easy by offering online therapy. With over 30,000 licensed therapists to choose from, if you need to switch therapists, you can do so at no extra cost. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn and get 10% off the first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher here with a bonus edition of the show. Appreciate everybody for tuning in, whether you're an everyday or you're listening each and every day. Thank you for the support. If you're new to the channel, welcome in. Hopefully you stay a while. And if you're somewhere in the middle, welcome back in to the show. Hit that like and subscribe button, video form and audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Talking about some of these MVP headlines, or I guess post-MVP headlines, which will certainly definitely die down over the coming days. I don't expect it to be too crazy moving forward, but there was a lot to come out of the NFL world yesterday. So figured, getting on here, talking about it instead of waiting until Monday, what was the best course of action. Let's continue the conversation. Emmanuel Acho, another guy who rode pretty hard for Josh Allen this year. He defended his vote for Josh and was not super well received, I would say. He said MVP is who has the most valuable season. To me, Josh Allen had the most valuable season because of what he did, who he did it with, and who he did it against. So kind of echoing the same thing that Dan Orlovsky said there. He also made it very clear that he talked to the AP guy about, the definition of All-Pro and MVP, and that All-Pro was statistical and MVP was valuable. Again, I don't know where this valuable narrative came into play. I don't know why all of a sudden we are having that conversation. I know, for some people who are arguing against Lamar Jackson, they point to the MVP last season where Lamar, didn't have the stats advantage that Lamar had this season over Josh. The difference was, and I've said this again, Lamar was, in my opinion, the best player in the league, maybe not stats-wise, but definitely in terms of eye test. He was on the best regular season team in Baltimore. The Ravens were the number 1 seed in the AFC, right? The Bills were number 2 this season, so that's another difference there. Every MVP year is different. I don't want to compare 2023 to 2024 or even next year, 2024 to 2025, because as we literally saw this season, what the award means and how it is evaluated is changing each and every single season. I mean, you can go back 5 years and it'd be a much different award and how people evaluated it compared to what it is today. But again, it just felt like a lot of the people who did vote for Josh Allen, we got think pieces from people who voted for Josh Allen. It just felt like, and what I said earlier, they felt like voting for Lamar for All-Pro or for Offensive Player of the Year was kind of like they're okay, I did that. Now I can actually vote for Josh Allen and not feel bad about it. I think that's the coping mechanism that people used. And so Kadri Ismail, our own Kadri Ismail, former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, comes on here every single week and talks Ravens football with us. He was not happy with the video. I boosted it out on Twitter, and he said that he felt a certain joy in his vote. Emmanuel Acho did, and if you understand that reference, you understand that reference, and Q put a colorful hashtag in there as well. It's just people who voted for Lamar, I think, not that Dan didn't feel confident in his vote, not that Acho didn't feel confident in his vote. That's not the conversation, because again, it was never going to be this, Lamar runs away with the MVP, and Lamar was clearly the MVP this season. Like, stats wise, yes, but there were other arguments that did favor Josh. But then it comes out that they're, okay, Lamar's first team All-Pro. Guess what? It's the same voters. It is the same voters that vote for All-Pro that vote for MVP. And here we are talking about Josh is the MVP, Lamar is the first team All-Pro. So again, I'm sure Lamar doesn't really care about this, if we're being honest. Just keeping it real here. Lamar's someone that always has said the MVP award is a high honor. He's very appreciative of it and the recognition. But at the end of the day, it's like it's not the be all end all for Lamar, and he's made that pretty clear. But Mina Kimes, she did vote for Lamar, and she ended up talking about her reasoning for her vote. Said that it was very close, right? She said the one wrong thing about the whole debate is that it was, there was one clear guy. That clearly was not the case at all, as I said. But she ended up saying that he played a harder slate of defenses and in their head-to-head matchup came out on top. She also mentioned the point that people point to Allen being the more valuable player because of the pieces he has around him. She said, I think people underrate how good the Bills' offensive line is. And that was another point she took into account. So, again, yes, Lamar's supporting cast was better. It was. I'm not denying that. I think we should all be in agreement on that. Lamar's supporting cast was better than Josh's this season. But again, it's like we're punishing Lamar for having Derrick Henry. Like, this is one of the only times I've seen this happen, especially in an MVP conversation where, usually in these conversations, a player is lauded. He's complimented for boosting a guy. Like, I think that Derrick helped Lamar and Lamar helped Derrick. Like, it was a two-way street here, but people are talking about how, okay, well, now Lamar, he was it was Derrick Henry was the real MVP. He's not even the real best player on his team. Like that's the conversation that at least I'm seeing a little bit of for Lamar. And we even saw that from national people about how Derrick Henry was the MVP and Lamar this, Lamar that. So it's interesting to kind of see the reasonings for why people voted for who. And we talked about yesterday. If you missed out on yesterday's show, be sure to check it out. Talked about some of the other Josh Allen voters who defended their vote. But it just felt like we saw a lot of defending from Josh Allen voters, and Lamar Jackson voters were like, yeah, it was the choice. Like that was the choice. Not that it was close. Not that it would, not that it wasn't close. Excuse me. Not that like it was this easy decision or anything. But it's just it's an interesting way that it all went, because you have to go back a long time to find the last time that the first team all-pro quarterback did not also win the MVP. And, you go back sometimes this other ways that you can word that. It hasn't even happened before. So again, Orlovsky's comments, not well received by the Ravens fan base, also just from the people on his own set. And then Emmanuel Acho, his comments not well received by the Ravens fan base as well on their votes. Again, they have the right to their vote. They have their vote. They can use it the way that they want to. Josh had an incredible season. Not trying to take anything away from Josh Allen. I continue to say that, and I want to, because I know that sometimes, me defending Lamar, maybe it comes off as like, okay, well, he doesn't like Josh Allen. I do. I promise you I do like Josh Allen. I like Lamar Jackson. Two awesome quarterbacks. I believe Lamar should have been MVP. Like, I believe that he should have been. But, again, doesn't take away from the season that Josh had. Coming up, though, in the final part of the show, continue kind of breaking down the mood of the MVP conversation, as well as some other things to talk about, just general Ravens-wise. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot coming your way on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus special at the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. And the show is brought to you by PrizePicks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions of winnings awarded, PrizePicks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least two players' projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw for 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you're cashing out. This week, I'm looking at the board and selecting more for Travis Kelce on receiving yards and more for Patrick Mahomes passing yardage. What I love the most is fast and safe withdrawals. When I win, my cash is in my account in as little as 15 minutes. Check out the promo tab to tail any of the super sweet Millie winners big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher here with you still on this Saturday edition of the show. Little bonus episode here. Whenever there are headlines here on Locked On Ravens, if we don't have enough time to talk about them during the week or some big ones develop over the course of Friday, we will do weekend bonus episodes. It had a lot during the season, obviously, when headlines were coming in left and right. Definitely less bonus episodes in the offseason, especially because, season's wrapping up, Super Bowl Radio Row, that all happened this week, and there are plenty of headlines coming out of that, especially with the MVP conversation going the way that it did. So Josh wins the MVP, 2 for Lamar, 1 for Josh Allen. And again, just kind of shocking for a lot of people in the NFL world how this all went down. I know there's been cries to go and figure out the MVP voting, just how it works, who gets the ability to vote. Obviously, Jim Miller, who was a former Steelers quarterback and does work for SiriusXM now, he voted Lamar 4th on his ballot, which, kind of crazy. But, those guys have their votes and they will use them how they use them. I definitely do not agree with a Lamar 4th place. Like, I can understand voting for Josh 1, Lamar 2. Even someone who voted for Josh 1, Saquon 2, Lamar 3. Still wouldn't agree with that. Like, I'd still be like, okay, what are you doing here? But 4th is a little crazy. 4th is actually very crazy. So you had former Ravens saying, revoke this guy's credentials. Torrey Smith said that. Torrey was very active, and he was someone who, I agreed with Torrey completely on a lot of what he said, especially on Thursday night after the award was announced, that he wasn't going to go on this whole Josh Allen hating tour, which, again, I have not done here. I've not, said, oh, Josh didn't deserve it and he's terrible. No. It's not about Josh winning the award, okay? If Joe Burrow won it, if Saquon won it, it was never about whoever was going to win it over Lamar win it. It was about Lamar losing it because, again, as I mentioned at the end of that second segment, you have to go back a pretty long while to find the last time the first team All-Pro quarterback did not win the MVP. And the stats are undeniable. A lot of other stuff is too. So Josh had a great season. I think most any other year that Josh had the year that he had, he'd be a pretty big shoo-in to win the award. The thing is, Lamar had the year that he had, and that's why it was such a close race. I mean, again, it was Josh got 27 first place votes. Lamar got 23. It was close, but that does mean that because Lamar got 30 first place AP votes for All Pro, that 7 people flipped and went Josh Allen for MVP over Lamar in that situation. So kind of a crazy way that all went down. It was always expected to be a close race. And, that, I guess it did not disappoint in that regard, but the Ravens, it was a bad night awards wise because Terrell Suggs and Marshall Yanda both did not get in on the first ballot of the Hall of Fame. Steve Smith-Senior did not get in after trying again. So hopefully we'll get some Ravens recognition next year at the NFL honors. But Derrick Henry did have a nice comment. We talked about that yesterday. Said he wants to retire a Raven. So, Derrick embodied this organization in his first year. It's been 11 months since he signed back in March last year. And, it's been as smooth as anyone could have imagined. So really glad that Derrick is enjoying his time. And look, on the field, it's been awesome. Off the field, it's been awesome. So really glad that Derrick is in Baltimore. I think another thing that I do want to talk about is Torrey Smith was down at Radio Row. He hopped on the Ryan Ripken show, and I obviously do some work over there at the Ryan Ripken show. The guys went down there, and Torrey had some pretty interesting quotes, actually some pretty good ones. He was talking about the Super Bowl at the end of that game back in 2012, 2013 against San Francisco, and he said, I feel comfortable talking about it now, but he was preparing for the worst. He said, preparing my heart for the worst, like I couldn't take it. I remember Joe Flacco being on the sideline saying, if he breaks this, can we tackle him? You remember there's a very viral clip of Joe saying, can we tackle him? Like if Ted Ginn Jr. were to break that kickoff, was there a rule against Joe Flacco tackling Ted Ginn, which obviously, yes, the touchdown will be awarded, so that couldn't happen. But Torrey was like, wait, let me know if there's a rule, because there wasn't. Obviously, Joe was going out there, and I'd be very curious to see if that was the case. But obviously, the Super Bowl being in New Orleans brings back those memories. The last Super Bowl was that Ravens San Francisco one, so we are we're going to see how that, how the Super Bowl plays out this season, but great memories of that Super Bowl in New Orleans. And Torrey actually said that, he's grown to love New Orleans for many special reasons, said that he his family came down for the trip last time, and obviously a lot of people were a lot younger back then. People are all grown up now, but he's actually staying at Jacoby Jones' mom's house, the late Jacoby Jones, who obviously passed away tragically, not even a year ago. It feels like forever ago that happened. Also feels like yesterday. It's so tragic still that Jacoby's no longer here, but, Tori's staying at the house of Jacoby's mom, who obviously Jacoby is from New Orleans, and, he said that he's going to come back to Baltimore 10 pounds heavier. He's enjoying the food. And so really awesome sound bites from Tori. Again, talked about how he had some stuff to say on Twitter about the whole Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson thing, but awesome insights from Tori down at Radio Row as well. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in to the show. Coming up, we'll probably have another bonus episode tomorrow because there is still more to take away from Radio Row. Some big guys, big names, big former Ravens talking about Lamar Jackson, talking about Josh Allen, talking about the MVP as well. So we'll probably have a bonus episode tomorrow. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along in audio form as well for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.